welcome back to my channel and Happy New Year. It is the 1st of January when you're seeing this. Today I am releasing my new pattern, the Vixen bag. Now I haven't quite finished squishing it, but it is a really fun bowler bag. It's got feet, it's got rolled handles. This is no raw edge here, so we're hiding all of that. And I even did a slip pocket in this bag. So if you'd like to see how to make this, stay tuned. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to start with the outside. So I'm going to take my exterior bottom and exterior top. Now this has got the hefty interfacing, and this has just got nothing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half and find the center. And then just make a little snip. So what we want to do is we're going to line up the snips like so, and then pin them with some wonder clips, join it together there, and then you want to come and do it at the end as well, there, and then the third end, and then everything else should fit in the middle like so. You just want to add some clips as you go and join it all together like so. And it does fit. I know it doesn't necessarily look like it here, but once you start clipping, you'll find that it does all fit together. This is probably the most tricky part of the whole thing, just because it is a curve. But it's sometimes fun to learn new things. And apparently I like curves, so there we go. Alright, so I've set my stitch length to 2.5. I am using bonded nylon thread in size M40. It's from Vardman Threads. There is a link in the description for you all. And then when we get to the end, you just want to backstitch like that. And then, before we take this off, I'm just going to spin it around. And I'm going to push this up and go up to a size 4 stitch length. And then I'm going to backstitch at the start and then stitch. So I've got my seam allowance face up. And I'm going to stitch that upwards like so. And I'm doing 1/8 of an inch from the seam that I just made. Now, if you want to, you can go ahead and put a second seam underneath. That is an optional choice. It's more there for decoration if you do, though. So now I will do the other one, and then we're going to go and I'll show you how to iron the foam onto the back. This is my heat press. So how I do this is I lay down a piece of baking paper so that nothing gets damaged or stuck. And then I'm going to take my exterior piece and put it face down. So even though there's vinyl, we're still going to be able to iron it. Now, I don't know if you can see, but I do have a couple of little wrinkles there. They will actually go away once I've ironed it. So now I'm going to place the foam in the center. Now, it shouldn't touch any of the edges because it's smaller. And then I'm just going to place another piece of baking paper over the top and make a baking paper sandwich, really. And then I'm just going to put this on for usually around 10 seconds. Sometimes it may need more depending on how long it's been heating up. So we're just going to have it down. And then you can tell if it's going to stick by you grab it by the fabric and see if it's going to move. Now I can see that this end here isn't quite stuck enough. So I'm just going to put it halfway through and re-stick it down. If you don't have a heat press, you can use an iron. You'll just have to hold it there for longer, as it does take a lot. So now you can see that the panel sits flat. There's no more little ripples like there was before when I was ironing it, before I ironed it, and the back is stuck on. So we'll do it again. I've got like one little bit of a ripple there. We're going to put it on the baking paper. Now the reason I always use 2 pieces of baking paper is because I don't want anything to transfer from my board to my fabric. It has happened to me before. I obviously didn't wash the fabric well enough before I did it, and it transferred some of the print. And then we're just going to swash it again. This also protects the top of the heat pad. Without the baking paper, the glue would just melt to the underside of the heat press. So, and you can just use the cheap home brand baking paper. It doesn't need to be anything fantastic, but it works. So then again, I check. I grab it from here. Everything is now flat and lovely, and it is stuck on. So now we can go back to the side. So I always let these cool down a little bit before I go. Otherwise, the glue on the back is sticky, and then it will stick to the table, and that's not ideal. So I let them cool down, and while I was doing that, I have put some double-sided tape down the center of all of the strap connectors. So I'm just going to peel that backing off and then fold both sides into the center. Now, if you're super new to bag making and you can't eyeball the center, draw a line before you put your double-sided tape on, and that will help you get it directly to the center. I have just done this long enough now that I don't need to draw the line. I probably drew the line for about a year or two, but since then, I don't know, I got better at it. Practice makes perfect, as they say. I also used to be crap at doing this fold over thing. So I pinch both sides together and then just push them straight down. They tend to go in the center for me, which is lovely. Down and squish. So I'm going to do all four because I'm not really worried that this one's going to bend and come undone with the sticky tape. If you've got a slightly more stubborn vinyl, then you may just want to do one of these at a time. I also possibly should have done most of them off camera, but you know, I didn't. Okay, so now I'm going to take my square rings. Now I'm not using chunky ones today just because, I don't know, thought I'd switch it up. Use skinnier ones. And I'm going to take 2 clips and just clip them over. So I put the ring on where the join is. So I put the join with the join so that I'm not going to see it. And then I line it up 1 inch and then fold it over and just clip it in place. So I'm going to do this to all 4 because it will be easier to put them on in a minute. On, over, and then clip. On, over, and clip. Alrighty. Move that over for a minute. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to fold it in half and clip the center of the top and the bottom. I don't need the top right now, but I might need it, or I will need it later. Not I might, I will. So while I've got the piece and I'm already finding the center, I may as well clip both ends. I will also need to do this to the lining, but again, we're not up to that bit yet. All right. So now I've got my little mark where the center is. So I've just clipped like a really small amount out of there. So I'm going to take a ruler, and because this is quite a dark print, I'm going to take a Chaco pen or a chalk wheel pen, which is not really a pen at all. And I'm going to measure with this 2.5 inches over there, and then 2.5 inches the other side there. And that's where our connectors are going to go. So I'm just going to go back to the line and then mark it along the top just to make sure that I get everything nice and even. And I'm going to do the same with the other piece while I've got the ruler out. So I'm going to go 2.5 inches over to there, and then mark the top, and then go the other way as well. Now the reason I'm using the Chaco pen is because this is quite dark. You can get these in a couple of colors as well. So I've got a blue one and a white one. or you could use a friction texter or a heat transfery, like a heat removing pencil. I don't know, whatever you like, whatever you mark your fabric with, I guess. Depends on where you live as to what you've got access to. So if you're new to bag making, so I will show you this, what you can do is you can take another piece of double-sided tape and put it down the center like this. And this will help you place it while you're stitching it. I'm only going to do it to this one just to show you, but you just put another piece of double-sided tape on, peel off the backing, and then start from the bottom and line it up, and now it won't move. So you want to be on a nicer long stitch length. So I'm on 4 today, just because I can. And I'm going to stitch 1/8 of an inch up the side, like this. And then I'm going to needle down and pivot. So by pivot, I mean move it around. And then stitch across the top. Needle down, pivot again, and then down the other side, like so. Right. So now I'm going to do the same with all 4 of the strap connectors. And then our outside pieces are done. So don't rush this. This is like a decorative top stitching that everyone will notice. Sometimes if you go too fast while stitching vinyl, your stitches will actually shorten, because it's not sliding because of the vinyl, which is obviously something we don't want. So slower means that you're more likely to get more even stitches. And I always back stitch at the end just to lock it in. But that is now done. Isn't it fantastic? I love this bag. This is currently the handbag I'm carrying around. Not this one, but this pattern. I did it in some summer colours since I'm in summer where I live. Not that it feels like it. It's really not that hot. As you can see, I'm in long sleeves today. My air conditioning has been on once all summer so far. All right, so needle down, pivot again. Over, needle down, pivot. Down the other side. I know that may seem fast to you, my stitching, but I promise that is actually quite slow for this machine. It does go much, much faster, but I just don't like to go that fast on vinyl. I think it's unnecessary. Line it up. Move the clips out of your way as you go. Needle down, pivot. One more, pivot, and then down the other side, like that. Now, if you want to, you can add a rivet in here, be it a decorative fancy one or just a standard one to add extra stability if you're worried that it might come out. You could also do them all the way down to be decorative, so you could do them every inch. Just make sure you leave them out of your seam allowance. So that is now the outside pieces done. So we're going to move on to some of the lining pieces. So you should have cut 2 of the exterior shape in a lining. Now you could have actually cut one out of the outside fabric, and then it would have been an accent pocket on the inside. But I thought I'd copy my instructions exactly for the first video. I'm sure I will be making many more of these. So I'm doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to sew these together, right sides together, to create my slip pocket. And backstitch. Trim off my tails, and then we're going to flip them over. Like so. And then we're going to top stitch along this top edge, well, 1/8 of an inch from the edge. So I'm just going to roll this in my fingers to get the curve. You can also iron it. Come on. So I'm just going to roll this curve down. And just keep rolling it as I'm moving along. Now again, I could have ironed this, but I'm trying to have minimal amounts of stops and starts. So I'm just going to roll the seam out till it's right on that edge and then top stitch along. And then back stitch, because we always back stitch. Okay, so then we take one of our lining main panels and we're going to fold it in half and find the centers, top and bottom, because we're going to need both. Bottom, top. And then we're going to find, you probably don't really need to do this, but we're going to find the center here as well and clip that. And then lay this on. Now, if everything is correct, it should fit quite nicely. Should be the same size. So I'm going to take my ruler and my Chaco pen again. And I'm just going to rule a line down that center, but only on the pocket panel piece. So now I've got a line. You can't really see it, but there is a chalk line. But I'm not going to stitch on the line. I'm going to stitch 1/8 of an inch each side of the line. So I'm going to start at the bottom and back stitch, of course. And then go up. Hit that original top stitching we did. Probably go over, you probably only need about 2 stitches. And then I'm going to go down 1/8 of an inch the other side of the line. And from here, I'm then just going to pick a side and tack or baste that pocket in place so now it won't move. Obviously, you can only do that one way. And then we're going to come back and do the other side. So you can start at the top here, or if you wanted to start from the center, you'd flip it over, start from the center and work your way out. That is entirely up to you. So I'm just stitching 1/8 of an inch from the edge to make sure that these stitches aren't seen. They're just to tack your pocket in place. So now I've got 2 pockets like so. So that's that side done. We can add that to our pile of almost ready pieces. And then I'm going to take my zipper pocket panel. I'm going to fold it in half like this. And then 1/2 inch down from the top, I'm going to rule a line. So it's going to come in 3/4 of an inch from the edge of each side like that. And then across there. And then measure 3/8 of an inch down and make a zippered box square. This is how I do all my zipper pockets. Unless I'm doing a video on how other people do them. Alright, so now I'm going to fold this up and have the part that where the fold is, the part I didn't draw on, goes up at the top. And now I'm just going to stitch around this box. So I personally like to start in a corner, but you can start anywhere, it doesn't matter. You just have to make sure that you back stitch at the start and the end to lock all your stitches in. And then back stitch. And then trim those tails. If you get in the habit of trimming tails early, it will just become second nature. And then when you get nearly finished, you're not going to have like a million different bits of thread hanging off. So I'm just going to, I actually just roll this over the edge of my table and pinch it so that I can cut in the center of the rectangle we just stitched. And then I'm going to, roughly in the center, I haven't drawn a line, I'm just eyeballing what the center is. I'm going to cut till about 1/2 inch from the end, and then I'm going to triangle out those corners so that you get a little triangle. Now this I'm going to iron. So I'm going to take the pocket piece and shove it through so it goes to the back. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to iron this so it's super flat. So I will be right back. So now that that is all lovely and ironed, I'm going to take my zipper I already put a zipper pull on, but we've got more to do, so I'll show you how to do that soon. Now, I always like my zip to close to the left, so I place it that way, and then I pick up the pocket piece, and I lay it over the top, like so. And then I can just stitch around. So I usually stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the opening and stitch all the way around the zipper. Now, when I get close to the zipper pull, I'm going to have my needle down, lift up my foot, and zip it open so that the zipper pull is now out of my way. And then continue on. Needle down and pivot. Needle down and pivot again. And then back the other way till I get almost to the zipper pull again. I'm going to make sure my needle's down. I'm going to lift up that foot. And then I'm going to zip her shut. And then I'm going to trim off all of those tails. Right after I had backstitched. You should always backstitch. I know you're sick of me saying it. I'm going to keep doing it. Okay, so now I'm going to just fold this over to here, like that, so that it's folded in half. And then I flip it to the front, and I'm just going to bend this over so that I can get to the sides, and then stitch the sides shut. Making sure that I'm backstitching at both ends, and trimming off those tails so that they don't annoy me later. Trust me, if you left all your tails on, it would drive you insane. Okay. Zipper pocket done. Now, let's go on to the gusset. So I got my zipper, which is the same length as my zipper top pieces, or gusset top pieces. So I'm going to take one lining right sides up, zipper, and I just need to seal off this end with a cigarette lighter. And then I'm going to lay that right sides up. And then I'm going to take this and go right sides down like that. Line it up, and then still with my normal stitch length, I'm going to join all of these together. Now you can clip it. I tend to just use my fingers, but I will show you the clipping, or how to use wonder clips on the other side. We go down to the end, we're going to backstitch. We're going to not cut it off, we're just going to flip it. We're going to bend over just this top bit, and then we're going to stitch 1/8 of an inch from the stitching that we just did. So from the join. So I just use my fingers to finger press it, like that. And then we're going to backstitch. And then I just finger press this side down now as well. So what that's done is there's now no stitching on the back here, but we've got top stitching to hold that down. The reason we don't top stitch this is because I'm not closing this bag with binding. I could probably do a hack video where I can show you how to do that, but that's just not what we're doing today. So I'm going to do the same thing again. Stars right side up, which is my lining. Zipper piece right side up. And then I want to take this, and I want this to go here. So I'm going to flip it that way. I like to have my gusset pieces facing the same way. Some people like to have them both facing outwards, so it doesn't matter which way is the front of the bag. It is entirely up to you how you do that. It's all just a print thing. Whichever way you want your print to be. There's not really a right or wrong answer. Oh, I told you I was going to show you how to clip this. Whoops. Sorry, this is now just habit. I used to always clip it, especially the second piece. But the more bags you make, the more proficient you get, I guess. So we're going to backstitch. And then again, I'm finger pressing. I'm making sure that the seam allowance is under where I'm stitching. You could also change and do like an accent color for this. That would look very cool. And then we're going to backstitch. Pull it out, trim off the tails, throw them in the bin as you go. So now I've got this. I'm going to open up this and just finger press that one open as well. You can iron it if you want to. It's not really a necessity, but you can. So I'm going to use 2 zipper pulls because that's what I like on this bag. And I'm just going to crack like 2 inches of the zip. And then I'm going to place one side in halfway and then bring the other side in. Now you can usually look in the top and see if they're lining up, and then just push and wiggle and it comes down like that. So now I'm going to do the same with the other end. So I'm going to crack it open just a little bit. You don't want to crack it the whole way. That's annoying, funnily enough. The floppier it is, the harder it is to do. So you just crack it a little way, and then you feed both sides in, and you look down from the top to make sure that they look even in there. And then you bring it down. Now you always zip them all the way together to make sure that there's not like a big buckle out the side. But I'm quite happy with that. That's sitting nicely. So we can move on. So I'm going to take my lining pieces. Now this is my base, and these are my side gussets. So I'm going to put them right sides together. These aren't really directional. And I'm just going to stitch with a 1/2 inch seam allowance along that edge. And then I'm going to take this one and do it to the other side of the base piece as well. Trim off those tails. So that's our lining one done. Then we're going to take our outside pieces. So our exterior base piece and our exterior side pieces. Now obviously these 2 are directional, so that will matter in a minute. But before we do that, I'm going to add bag feet. So I'm going to take my template, lay it on top, and I'm going to clip it in place. I could also measure this, but this is just as easy. So I'm going to clip it on. And then I'm going to get my hole punch, and I'm going to hole punch through the pattern and the center of my big black dots. Like so. So this has now made it so if I want to next time I can draw those holes. But I'm not going to. I will always just hole punch it because I find it easier. Now this is the wrong connection. That was for my whippersnapper I made myself last night. And then I'm just going to screw the rivet set on. And then I'm going to take my bag feet and I'm going to push the spikes through the back. So I've got foam and stabilizer on the base like that. And just squish it down. Now you don't want to push as hard as you humanly possible. You just want to push it until you feel it kind of click together. And you can feel it, I promise. Now this is just a normal 10mm rivet set. I only have one size rivet punch for all rivets. I just use this one. It actually come with it when I got given it. I got given this one. And I didn't use it for a long time, so I didn't think I needed it. But trust me when I say that it's much easier using this than not using it. Alright, pop that down there. So now I've got my bag feet connected. So now what I want to do is I want to take the bottom, so where the print is, the bottom, and put that right sides together along here, like this. We're going to stitch, we're going to back stitch, we're going to stitch across, and we're going to back stitch. Now before I cut this off, I'm just going to swing it round, fold this under, but this time I want this piece, my seam allowance, to go on the vinyl side. I'm going to go up to a size 4 stitch length, and I'm going to stitch 1/8 of an inch along there, like so. So now this is facing towards the center. I'm going to do the same to the other side. So I'm going to take the bottom of the print and stitch it to here, but I'm going to go back to my joining stitch length before I do. back stitch. As you can see, my tails just got caught in my foot. Back up to a decorative stitch length. Fold this under so that it's underneath the vinyl, and then top stitch along here. There's actually lots of little add-on things you can do to this bag, so I might do a video on that. It's on my mind. Alright, so now we should have 3 pieces. So we always start with the lining because it's more pliable and so it's going to be easier to work with. So we're going to open this up. And we're going to line this up by pulling it. Now, if you've done all the correct seam allowances, it should fit perfectly. So what we're going to do with a joining stitch length is stitch up to, but not over the zipper. Trim off those tails. There's going to be a lot of tails doing it like this, but by doing it like this, we skip binding. So, I mean, take your pick, really. So we're going to stitch the other side from the outside up to, but not over the zipper. Like that. So now you've got it joined, but with a gap. Technically, I could stick my finger through there if I felt the need. Then, I'm going to make sure that there's no twists in this, no twists up here, and I'm going to join the other side. So this is essentially closing the circle, or the loop, up to, but not over the zipper. Back stitching at both ends so that nothing comes undone. And then grab this, do the same on this end. You could have also done one complete end at a time. I just find doing all of the lining is pretty much easier. Okay, so now we're going to do the same to our exterior. So we're going to place them together, right sides together. And again, if you've used size 5 zipper, you pull it all out, everything should line up really well. And a back stitch up to, but not over the zipper, again. And then we're going to move all this lining out of the way. And we're going to go this side. Do the same thing. And then while we're here, I'll just show you how to finish this off. So you now flatten these out. So like this. So you've got exterior lining and now it's all flat. And then we're going to just pop it under and just stitch the gap shut over the zipper. So that's the only part where they're going to be joined. Trim off the tails as always. And so now that is shut. But please make sure you put your zippers on before you start doing this, because once it's sealed, it's painful to unstitch. Not gonna lie. So up to, but not over the zipper. Back stitching. Flip her over. Back stitch, up to, but not over the zipper. Trim your tails. Like I said, there's a lot of tails in this method, but there's no binding. And I know a lot of people are very skeptical or don't like binding. This bag can be made with binding though, and you can skip half of these steps. That's a bit quicker for you. Okay. Trim off the tails, and so now you should have a loop here and a loop here. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the center of everything. So you can actually just take the base. As long as you've done all your seam allowances correctly, we just need to find the center of the top, center of the bottom of both sides. So if you're worried, you can come all the way up to here and join it down to the edge, but your seams should line up. So the bottom here is already done. I already did this one earlier when I was marking where to put my logo. So I'm now going to do the top gusset. So I'm going to join where the join parts are, pull it out, and then clip it right there. And if you pull the lining out, you should be able to match it up because they are even. So again, I'm going to do the other side. So I'm going to match it up at the seams like that. Pull tight, trim off a corner. Then I'm just going to pull this up because sometimes it's down a little bit. And I'm just going to cut another little V. So now I've got the center of everything. So I can start, actually I don't have the center of this one particular piece. So where the zipper pocket panel was, I didn't find the center. I don't want to cut at the center with that, I'll cut myself. So we want the center of everything, and then everything should just match up and fit in lovely. So we're going to start with the top center of the lining. Now you'll also want to open up the zippers. You don't have to do it right now, but while I'm thinking of it, I'm going to remind you. So I'm going to match up the notches at the top. And I just threw pieces on the floor. Whoops. And I'm going to make my clips face the gusset piece. So away from my main panel. And I'm just going to clip 3 at the top. And then I'm going to come to the bottom. I'm going to match up the notches at the bottom because that is the center. And I'm going to have the clips face the gusset here as well. Like that. And this seam I'm going to make face the center like we did with the outside piece. It's not quite like quilting where you'd want them to go opposite. I want them to head towards the center. So I'm going to make sure I put a clip there. Like that. And then the rest of this should just maneuver in here perfectly. If you've done all the correct seam allowances. If you haven't, just unstitch the edge and do a little bit more of a seam allowance. And this seam here, you want to point towards the ground or the bottom of the bag. So we're just going to add some clips. Clips, clips, clips. And then we're going to go to the other side and do the same thing. So it should all fit pretty nicely. So again, this seam allowance, I'm going to point towards the bottom and then I'm going to put a clip on it so it can't move. And we're just going to keep moving around. Clipping as we go. You might get a little bit of ruffles in the curves. As long as it's not in the seam part, it's fine. Outside the seam allowance is totally fine. So now that's clipped like this. I want the gusset facing upwards. And I'm going to start at the bottom because the straight parts are always easier to start on. And I'm going to stitch and back stitch. And stitch along, and I'm just going to pull the clips out as I go. Now I know I'm going to run out of bobbin thread soon, but I have prepared another one, but I'm just keeping an eye on it now because I know it's coming. And it's not fun to sew without bobbin thread. I don't know how much further I've got. Needle down. And then when I get back to the start, I'm going to backstitch. So now that is one side completely on. So now that it's stitched, you can check if you want to on the inside to make sure there's no ruffles or issues. And then I'm going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut off some of this excess fabric. You know, you might be wondering, why didn't I just do a different seam allowance? And the official answer is because it's easier to trim this off than stitch closer to the edge without missing. And we want to trim this off so that this sits neater on the inside of the other part. But while trimming, you want to keep this bit here. So I'm not going to do the complete top. I'm just going to trim off everything basically up to there. So I'm just trimming probably half of what the seam allowance is that's left. And this will help the bag, because lots of people sometimes have like soggy linings, for lack of a better word, where they droopy linings. Soggy lining sounds better. But anyway, a good way to stop this is doing what I'm doing now. So you trim away the excess at the bottom and the sides, but we're going to leave a little bit at the top for a little bit later, and I'm going to show you why when we get to it. So now I'm going to take my other side. We're going to do something similar, but not quite the same. So I'm going to match up the top, add 3 clips, one in the center and then one each side to help hold it in place. And then I'm going to come to the bottom and I'm going to line up that bottom, and I'm just going to put 1 clip there. And then I'm just going to come all the way out to my seam. I'm going to make sure that that's facing the same way, and I'm not going to put a clip until I get to that seam. And I'm going to do the same with the other side, and then I'm going to actually take this clip and put it there. So we are not going to stitch the bottom of this bag open. We are going to stitch from that seam around to the other seam. But we still need to match it up because we will stitch it shut eventually, obviously. Can't be walking around with the bottom of a bag open. That's weird. So, now I am just clipping around the curves, adding it in. Like this. And then I'm going to come and do the other side. So you can work bottom up, top to bottom, bottom to top. But I always have my wonder clips facing the gusset because they're easier to pull off while I'm sewing. So I don't have to stop and start as often. Obviously sometimes I do. I get like a pile and they annoy me while I'm sewing. But I can pull off, you know, half a dozen before I stop instead of just one at a time. Not that there's anything wrong with that. If you're beginning, stitch up to a clip, pull it off, stitch up to a clip. Just as you become more advanced, you try and get like a smoother progression. Okay, so now I've got the bottom open. So I'm going to stitch from here around to that one. So I've got gusset up, so I'm just going to push it out of my way. Start here, stitch and back stitch, always back stitch. If this come undone, that would be super annoying. You always want to try and stop with the needle down before you start maneuvering everything. See, I can hear I'm nearly out of bobbin thread. I'm not sure if you've heard a difference in my machine, but I definitely have. So I'm just keeping an eye on it. Then when I get to that one, I'm going to back stitch, pull it out, and leave the bottom open. So I'm going to trim off those tails. And then the same as we did with the other side, I'm going to come and trim this off, but obviously not the bottom because it's not shut yet. And I just want to leave a little bit at the top, so I'm going to stop there, flip it over, and then I'm going to do the other bit. And the reason we're trimming this down, again, is to just make sure that your lining is going to sit really nicely inside the bag. Okay, so that's the inside's done. I'm going to have to hit pause because I dropped all my exterior pieces.
Got them.
So, we're going to do the same that we did with the outside, with the exception of leaving the gap. We only need the gap in the bottom of the lining so that we've got somewhere to turn the bag through. And I'm just pulling off the residue from my double-sided tape from when I was doing my logo on the base. Okay, so marking to marking, Lots and lots of wonder clips. Now I will always use more clips on the outside than the inside because it's going to fight me more because there's a lot more thicker layers. There's more layers, they're thicker, they just like to fight me. So I always use more clips so that even while I'm stitching, it's not going to shift and distort my bag. There's no right or wrong amount of clips. I'm sure some people can do the bag without clipping. I can do a lining without clipping it. I don't do it on camera for the most part. Sometimes I do. So again, we want this seam to point down. So it's going to go over the foam in this particular instance. Round and round we go. Whoops. Nope, lost that one. What's a Tory video without me dropping a clip? I feel like it's a thing. I don't mean to. It just happens. Right. So that's like half done, or just over half. And again, I'm still making all the clips face the gusset. And then I'm going to push this towards the bottom. And then I can come back up to the top and work my way down. I could have kept going the other way. I just like to switch it up. There's no real reason why, I just do. Okay. So now I've got all the pieces on there. So I'm going to do it gusset side up as always. And I like to start on the straight because it's easier. So I'm going to start here, I'm going to back stitch, and off I go. Now this is being a little bit stubborn because of the residue of the leftover sticky tape. I've got a little bit there still, I couldn't quite get it all off. So I'm going to stop now so that I can readjust and tidy up the wonder clips. I'm also going to make sure that I'm pushing this in the down direction. Oh, and I've run out of bobbin thread. Of course I have. All the way back there. Because I stopped watching. That's alright. I made another one. And this one should last to the end of the video because I've only got the two sides. A little bit of other stuff. Handles, bottom of the bag, and the bottom of the zipper pocket. Okay, so I'm going to go back to where I stopped. When I can be bothered, I can actually do this without clipping. Like that. It can be done without clipping this stuff. It's just advisable that you do it. So we're just gonna, okay, I'm back to the clips. So I'm just gonna pull them off as I move around. We're gonna get back to the start and then we're gonna back stitch. Okay. I'm pretty happy with that. You just want to check on the inside of the bag again to make sure that all your corners are nice and you haven't got any pinches anywhere. Mine looks lovely. So, I'm going to do that same thing again where I take my scissors and I'm just going to cut off some of the excess because we don't need it there anymore, but I'm going to leave a little bit at the top of the exterior as well. And again, you might all be wondering why, but I'm about to show you as soon as I've stopped clipping. So the other reason we take this off, again, is so that you can nestle your lining right in there quite nicely. And it'll stop it being so droopy. Okay, so now that I've done that, I've got my lining here. Let's go to the other side. So here's my exterior, and here's my lining. So I'm just going to pull them together, and you're just going to match up the notches because everything's in the center. I'm going to clip it so that I can fully show you what we're doing. So what I've done is I've taken the outside, I've taken the lining on the same side of the zip, and I'm just going to stitch it and kind of tack it along here. So what that's going to do is on the inside of the bag, it's going to hold the lining up so it's not going to sag inside. So you just want to go slowly because there are quite a lot of layers here. It doesn't really matter about where your stitches are. And you don't have to do heaps and heaps, but you just want to do a few so that they are joined. So it's not a huge amount. It's only there to there. But that will now hold the roof of the bag up and not have any sagging. Another way you could do it is add a thicker interfacing to your lining pieces, but then it's going to be harder to turn through. So we're going to do exactly the same again on this side. So I'm going to clip around, sew it, and then tack the lining to the exterior at the top. And you're going to see a really big difference. If you've never done it before, try it. You might be pleasantly surprised. I don't know if I've ever done this trick in a video. Oh, and I've gone green. What the hell? I've just looked at my camera and it's gone green. Alright, I'm going to go see if I can fix that. I also might stitch this down. I'll be back in a minute. I stitched the other side on, but I just thought I'd show you again how to do the tacking. So here's my exterior gusset and here's my lining gusset. So you're just kind of going to push down there so that you can bring the center together. And you don't even need to do as much as I did last time. You just want to do a little bit of a tacking. So we do still, not tacking. We're still going to backstitch because we want to lock it in. We don't want it to come undone for any reason. We're just going to stitch along and then backstitch. And then trim off the tails. Okay. So now we're going to turn it through the hole in the bottom of the bag. So I'm going to stick my hand in and go to a corner, and I'm going to push the corner in so it's a poppet, and then basically it's so I've got a handful of something to grip. So I'm going to grab it and just pull it through the gap. Like so. The bag actually comes through quite easily if you do it this way. I'm a fan, what can I say? Probably why I wrote it into the pattern, I guess. Okay, so then I'm going to put my hand back into the base on the inside so that I can push all of these corners out so that they're going to sit as nicely as possible. Now the bag's not going to sit perfectly yet. We're going to do that right at the end. But we just want to make sure that everything's pushed out. And if you've got any pinches that you didn't see before, now is the time to fix them. Then I'm just going to unzip the zipper pocket, put my hand into the zipper pocket, grab the hole in the lining, and pull the lining through the zipper pocket. But only the base of the open bit. And then I'm just going to stitch it shut. Now if you want to, you can put clips on this, but I don't need to. But everything should line up because we already pre-measured it. And then back stitch. And then we're going to take our scissors And again, trim down that excess so that this side also sits nicely in the bottom of the bag. We couldn't trim it before because we hadn't stitched it yet. But now that it's been shut, you can stitch it. And then just push it back into your pocket. So this is now the pocket, or the base of the pocket. So I'm just going to take my fingers and bend in the raw edges like that. Now you can iron this if you want to, or you can add clips. In fact, I'll do clips to show you. So you just want to make sure that the seam's right on that edge there. And then we're going to take a couple of clips like so. And then we're going to stitch it shut, just again with a normal stitch length. We're going to back stitch at the start, back stitch at the end. Now technically the bag part is done. We just need some handles. Now you can put any handles on this bag, but I thought I'd do rolled handles just for something different. So I also want to show you, so I'm going to stand up and just push the lining in. Now as you can see, the bag's not sitting great, but look at the lining. See how it's sitting? Let me fold down this side. See how the top of that lining is sitting all the way up inside the bag. And the more I sit and fiddle with it, the more I'll get it to sit correctly. But see how up here, the lining is all the way up. There's no sagging motion. That's because we tacked it in place. Now, to finish off this bag and get the nice shape, we're going to do the Tory squish. So we're just going to pinch it at the seam and then violently shake it in opposite directions to get like a nice crisp fold. So you have to actually go around the whole bag and do this, but see how it's giving us a nicer, you see up here how you can still see a lot of this bit. Now that I've done the squish, it's more smooth. So you do need to go around and do that on the whole bag. I'm not going to do it all right now, because that will take ages. But you just want to do that around, especially on this base as well. So get the base to sit under the bag. We're going to get on there. And I'm going to do it even more on the base because of all the extra interfacing and stuff that's going on here. But you just want to do the Tory squish. I don't know what this is actually called. That's why I'm calling it the Tory squish. And you can already see how the, okay, so see that side sits flat compared to this side where you can still see all of this lining. So it does work. And I haven't even finished yet. Anyway, you need to do that all the way around the bag, but we're not going to do that in a video. It'll take me too long. We're going to do our handles. So the measurements are in the pattern, but I just wanted to show you this. So you want to measure 3 inches up, 1 inch in, and 3 inches on the other side, and then cut that bit off. So I did it to all the other pieces, but I just thought I'd show you. Trim it off like so. And so now we need a ruler and a pen. Now I'm just going to use a normal pen for this. And we're going to measure 1 inch along the edge of the whole thing. So just drawing lots of lines. Doesn't matter that they overlap. You might be wondering, why am I doing 1 inch? Well, I'm going to show you in a minute. Now, if you wanted to do, you can make these less wider and then do less of what I'm doing now. I'm just going to do one handle to show you. I'm on a little bit of a time constraint today. But you've now got this. It looks crazy, right? Don't stress. I'm not stressed. I'm going to take some double-sided tape. And I'm going to start with the end. So I'm just going to put it right up near the angled line that we've done. Like this. And then I'm going to peel the backing off. And I'm going to fold the vinyl up to the line that I drew. So we're going to pick a side. We're just going to fold it up to the line like that. Now, this extra bit we're going to chop off in a second, but we're just going to fold this side up as well. And you can see that there's a little bit extra. You can actually just trim that off any which way you like. This very, very point we're not going to see anyway, so I'm not super worried about it, to be totally honest with you. Right, but I've now got a nice pointed end. So what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch the end, and then we're going to do the same to the other end as well. So I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and I'm just going to top stitch down, making sure I back stitch, of course. Top stitch down to the point, and then pivot and go back up the other side. Like that. Trim off my tails. And so now we've got this point. We're going to do the same to the other end. So again, we want to go up to the line. You can even put one piece on, peel it off, then put the other one on. It'll be easier to trim and stick. And that way you won't overlap your pieces, but it just means a lot of picking up and putting down. So then again, we're going to fold this up to that line that we drew. So basically you're folding over 1/2 inch. But rather than marking 1/2 inch and then trying to guess where that fold is in there, I actually find it easier to do it this way. So then again, I'm just going to hack off some of that end. I know that's not very technical. I'm okay with it. Truly am. And then we're going to top stitch from the top side. So from here, 1/8 of an inch. And the reason we're making this pointy is so that we can get our ring, our metal ring on the bag that's going to feed through here. So we need to actually be able to get it on. I know there's lots of different ways on how to make rolled handles. This is just the way I come up with. There's other ways where this is just going to hide the raw edge, but not everybody cares about that. Therefore, it's not necessarily an issue. I just wanted to hide the raw edge. On my original bag that I did, there was raw edge on my vinyl, and I find it annoys me when I carry it. One of these days I'll get around to changing it, although I'll probably change handbags before that. And then we just need to... So we're going to do the same with the long edges now, except the stitching part. So we're going to put some double-sided tape on them. I know we use a lot of double-sided tape in this. You can clip it instead, but I promise the tape thing's easier. And then I'm going to fold the edge up to the line. And we should still have a gap in the middle, by the way. These don't actually touch in the center. So I still have to put in, I'm going to use tubing, but you can also use cord or rope. My original bag, I got 8mm rope from a hardware shop. So now you've got something that looks like this. Don't worry about this little double over there. That's not going to matter. You're not going to really see it, because we still need to put our center in. Now this is like tubing. You can use rope by all means. It's pretty much the same thing. Doesn't really matter. I like the tubing. Gives it like a nice firm fancy feel. But again, you can just use normal whatever. Oh, my chair's sinking. Can anybody else see that? Okay, so I'm going to cut a piece of tubing to the length that I need. Obviously, that's important. And then I'm going to stick it to the center of the tubing, of the handle. Then we're just going to roll it over grab some clips and clip it together like so. Now you're going to probably want to use a lot of clips for this. This is where we're going to stitch. Oh, and my husband's home. Alright, I'll have to hit pause and we'll come right back. So I have put clips all the way along here. And the other thing I have done is I have put my zipper foot in. So I want to be able to get nice and close to this stitching. So I put my zipper foot on. So we're just going to start slightly on the old stitching, or the original stitching at the end. And I've got my stitch length on nice and long. Now you want to go really slow with this. You don't want to roll off the edge if you can help it. So I'm just stitching close to the edge. I've started at the wrong end. All my clips are now upside down, which is super annoying, but what do you do? So you want to make sure that it's not going to roll out from underneath your stitches. Also, maybe do a stitch test piece to make sure that your stitching is tight enough. I had to adjust mine on the first one I ever did because it was a little bit loose and kept looping in the bottom. And it had nothing to do with my me threading the machine. It was just I needed to tighten the tension just a little bit. So I'm just going really slowly to make sure that it doesn't move while I'm stitching it, because you want to stitch both layers together. And they are likely to move. So this is, I would go a little bit faster than this, but all my clips are upside down, which makes them harder to pull off. So we're just going to keep stitching down until we hit the other stitching like that, and back stitch, and then trim off those tails. And so now you should have your handle. And if you can see on this handle, a couple of my stitches have gone a bit dodgy. So that just means I need even more tension. And I'm just going to stitch over the same lines. I'm going to hold on to my tail so that I don't get mangled. Now this could also be because I stopped and started so much. But I'm just going to stitch these again with a slightly tighter stitch length. Stitch tension, sorry, not stitch length. And then we're going to back stitch. Check the back, that worked much better. Alright, so trim off your tails. And then I'm going to take a ruler and a pen, and I'm going to measure and mark where I'm going to put the holes. There and there. Same with this one. So all the measurements are in the pattern, obviously. It'd be weird if they weren't. Measure there and there. And then I'm just going to get my hole punch from over here. I'm going to punch all 4 of the holes. You would actually normally do both handles at the same time. Well, of course you don't have to. Just makes it a little bit easier. And then we're going to take the bag. Now I've already got one handle on. So you're just going to thread this up through the bottom. And then put your post through the first hole. And then bring it around to the second hole. Which is... Now this will be a little bit tight, but it's kind of how you want it. And then this extra tail bit, you can just push inside there so that it's out of the way. And then I'm going to put the cap on. Oh, I'm going to grab my rivet set, press, whatever you want to call it, pop it under, and squish it down. And so then we're going to do the same to the other handle. So we're going to go through the pointy bit at the end and then through the other hole, and that will naturally, that little bit there, just push it inside so it's out of the way. That's why we leave the point on, so that we can tuck it up. And then we're just going to set the rivet like so. And your bag is complete. You've just got to continue doing the Tory squish the whole way around. But there you go, one bag. Hope this was helpful, guys, and I hope you learned something new. Until next time, bye-bye.